What does it mean to dream? What is a dream? Is it a series of thoughts, images, emotions, strictly observed through sleep? Maybe more like an idea, something currently unobtainable in your reality? Or is it maybe some sort of goal or purpose that drives you? What is the nature of those dreams? And when do those dreams become nightmares? More importantly, what happens when we wake? If it's a good dream, a great one even, maybe you feel like you wanted to stay there, maybe just for a few minutes longer. If it's a nightmare, you'll probably feel relief. Yeah, if not maybe a bit of panic and confusion upon your first few waking moments. Can a dream that started out good become a nightmare? What about shared dreams? What if the dream you're having is the other person's nightmare? Or maybe the reverse is true. Their dream is your nightmare. What are the implications of something like that? In terms of dreams, Link's Awakening embodies all of that and more. It was a dream for the development team. It was a dream for the players, although they didn't really know it at the time. Narratively, it was a dream of Link's. It was a dream of Marin's. It was a nightmare for the Windfish. Koholint Island, a place where reality and dreams collide. A place that asks you, what are you willing to sacrifice for your dreams? Welcome back to the channel, everybody. My name is Leon, and it's a pleasure to have you here once again for the Legend of Zelda retrospective. This one's a bit more loaded in terms of development. I say that because if you didn't know, this game was sort of a passion project. It was made in secret, for the most part. A small crew working after regular work hours. As they put it, a sort of after-school club. In truth, one Kazuaki Morita was playing around with a Game Boy dev kit, and what he was working on caught the eye of Takeshi Tezuka. Tezuka, fresh off of working on A Link to the Past, was looking to experiment more in the Zelda framework. He wanted to give players more options in terms of active gameplay by being able to remove the sword and equip other items to the face buttons. This was something he had been looking to implement in A Link to the Past, but was shot down by Miyamoto. Over time, the crew grew to be many people. In fact, the group was more or less the same team that made A Link to the Past. Eventually, once they felt they had a solid thing going, they formally pitched the idea to the higher-ups, and they got the green light to develop the game properly. Originally, the plan was to port A Link to the Past to the Game Boy, but that quickly changed, and Link's Awakening became its own thing. And that thing had lots of, well, let's just call them cameos. You have Goombas, Piranha Plants, Chain Chomps, Yoshi, Luigi, Peach, Shy Guys, Wart, the villain from Super Mario 2, Fat Wart, this guy, Richard is his name. He's from a game called The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls. I'd never heard of that either. SimCity's Mr. Right, and Kirby. It should be noted that all these cameos were not approved in any way. They were just tossed into the game because, and I'm not kidding, quote, it was for the Game Boy system, so we thought, oh, it'll be fine. Tezuka, the game's director, said that during an Iwata Asks interview a while back. Now, this game, per Tezuka's direct instruction, was to have almost nothing to do with any of the other Zelda games so far. Exceptions, of course, for Link. So what did that mean? That meant no Zelda, no Ganon, not really, anyway, no Triforce, no Hyrule. Tezuka was quoted as saying, "It was like we were making a parody of a Zelda game." Kensuke Tanabe joined on as the writer of the title and was looking to have a story focused around an egg on a mountaintop. That egg, when hatched, would then end the world. Now how would they go making that into a feasible story? Well, that's where the other writer, Yoshiaki Koizumi, came into the picture. Being influenced by, of all things, the acid trip that is Twin Peaks,
Tibet.
Koizumi came up with the idea that it's all a dream, and the influence is there to see. It's a fairly small town with a bunch of suspicious types, people who are all aware of something, and they all allude to some grand mystery, but only to like a point. Rounding out the dev team were the character designers Masiano Arimato and Shigefumi Hino, along with illustrator Yoichi Kotabe. The music, which is still fondly remembered, was made by Minako Hamano and Koizu Ishikawa. This was their first Zelda title. Add into that mix Kazumi Totaka, who is famous in his own right, and all their collective talent created one of the more influential Zelda games ever made. Future designer and lead for the series, Eiji Aonuma, said that Link's Awakening was the quintessential isometric Zelda game. And had this not come out between A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time probably would have been very different. This game was incredibly well received at the time of its release, way back in August of 1993, holding a strong, about A average. That's 90% or better. It was in the best-selling category for 90 straight months and easily sold 3.84 million copies over the course of its lifetime. Then, later in 1998, after the Game Boy Color came out, long live the atomic purple, by the way, Link's Awakening got the color treatment. Link's Awakening DX was released, and that sold a further 2.22 million units. The DX version was largely the same, with some notable improvements. Of course, the game was in color now, but on top of that, there was an additional dungeon that was added to the title. And also, was Game Boy printer compatible. This version was also very well received and continues to hold that same A average. In recent years, this game was remade into an updated Switch title. It was remade from the ground up by Grezzo. Though, that's a story for another time. Outside of that, you can play the DX version on the Switch with the Nintendo Game Boy Online function, and or any system that had access to the Virtual Console before they shut those down. And obviously on the Game Boy if you still have that thing kicking around. What started out as only an idea became one of the best games on the Game Boy, let alone one of the best in the Zelda franchise as a whole. Some dreams are worth chasing. This is where the Zelda formula was more or less put to the test. Being that this game was on the Game Boy, and the Game Boy has way less buttons than a standard Super Nintendo controller, certain ideas were implemented to help facilitate the gameplay. Link still has all of his movement from A Link to the Past. He can move in all 8 directions, and honestly, the movement is pretty smooth. Much more so than the original NES game. His basic sword attack is exactly as it is in A Link to the Past, so it's got a nice, large, swinging motion. Holding the attack button will have him hold the sword out and charge up the big swing. Select pulls up your map, and Start shows the equipment screen. What is new is the fact that Link can equip any item to either of the face buttons. He can equip and combine just about anything. This is pretty awesome, but it's also kind of a pain, because if you like to have certain equipment on at all times, like I do, Rock's Feather is great, by the way, you'll be seeing a lot of that item screen. That said, when this thing works, it really works. Testing and combining item pairings is half of the fun here. The game actively encourages you to experiment. There are some new items in Link's arsenal here. None more fun than the Rock's Feather. This allows Link to jump, and that simple inclusion adds so much to the gameplay. You can dodge with it, you can clear simple obstacles, you can combine it with the boots to do a running jump, you can jump attack, and so much more. Plus, it's just plain fun to do. Many other items make returns as well. All of them work exactly as you think they would. Bombs, bows, arrows, ocarinas, hookshots, boomerangs, the list continues. Just about every important item from the Zelda game is here. This also includes the passive items as well, things like the Zora Flippers or the medicine bottle you can get. In the DX game, you can get the red or blue mail. One improves the attack and the other defense. While we're talking about stuff like that, you can find temporary power-ups. When you defeat an enemy, you have a pretty good chance to pick up either a piece of power, it looks kind of like a triangle, or the defense acorn, which, well, it looks like an acorn. Your task, much like most Zelda games, is to hunt down and best 8 dungeons scattered around the land and claim the instrument at the end of each one. Each dungeon gets progressively more difficult in terms of puzzles and, well, just the types of monsters that exist in each one of them. What is fun in this game, though, is the explanation for that. In most other games, the difficulty increases because you, as a player, are better, or your character gets stronger, but that's really about it. There's almost no narrative reason for the other areas being tougher than the starting ones. But this game has that justification. More on that later, though. Being that this is a portable game, you can save at any time, and in terms of having Link be as strong as he can be, there aren't very many pieces of heart to find. Link can have a maximum of 14 hearts overall, 3 of which he starts with, and 4 more you can piece together. Along with that, you can find quick travel points to get around Koholint that much easier. Are you a fan of the trading sequence that appears in most Zelda games? Well, you have this game to thank for that. Thankfully, the trading sequence in this game isn't all that bad. As long as you pay attention to the characters, you can pretty much figure out what it is they're looking for, and finish it out fairly quickly. If you do that, you can get the boomerang, which seems kinda lame, but that boomerang is the most powerful thing on this island. It one-shots just about everything, so it's worth it. In the same vein, should you collect 20 of these secret seashells and enter this hut, you can get the seashell sword, or the Sword of Koholint if you'd prefer. It's a pretty nice reward for gathering those shells and makes dealing with monsters that much easier. One plus, though, is that this game allows you to find 26 of those shells, which means you don't have to go out of your way to try and hunt them all down. You'll only end up finding 20 of them anyway, if you put in even just a minimal effort. Don't try to find the ones after that, though. Once you hit 20, the game makes the other 6 disappear. So, the game gives you that little bit of extra leeway, but don't go breaking your back trying to find something that's not there. And that, I'm sure, is a dream come true for those completionists out there. One draw I think this game holds over almost any other portable Zelda is the fact that this game was the first. Yeah, other Zelda games came out on portable systems, many of them great in their own right, as we will see with the Oracle games, but this one this was the first. Being that it was the first one, it had to set a sort of tone, both in terms of how the game would play, but also in how the story would be told. It's smaller, like way smaller when compared to its contemporaries. But then, it has to be, because of the Game Boy itself. Don't get me wrong, Game Boy is a damn fine system, tough as nails and capable of surviving an explosion and still be able to play games, but the power is limited by its size. It's a small system, so the games by circumstance are smaller as well, which is perfectly fine. Given what this game is, while it could have come out on the Super Nintendo and might have been better for it in terms of visuals, would that have helped it in terms of its identity? I don't think so. I believe this game is fondly remembered because it was a Game Boy game. It took what we liked about A Link to the Past and condensed it further into its own adventure we can take with us on a trip, to school, to a friend's house, anywhere really. If it were on the Super Nintendo, it might not have had as strong an impact. It's still a Zelda game, so at the very least it would have had that as part of its legacy, but the fact that it was on such a small device and dared to do what this game did, that's something special. That said, what did this game do exactly? Well, it made it so that a grand adventure could be played on the go. Looking at the map of Koholint, you can see that it almost mirrors Hyrule in A Link to the Past. Basically one for one. So, to some degree, if you're familiar with that game, you can and will have a pretty easy time here as far as navigation goes. On top of that, the established Zelda formula at this point mixes uniquely well with the portable aspect of a Game Boy. If you have, say, 10 to 15 minutes, you can travel from one location to another. If you have maybe 30 minutes to spare, you might be able to tackle a dungeon, which in and of itself is sort of like a natural start and end point. If you have only a handful of minutes, you can hunt down some seashells, heart pieces, or maybe track a trade item. You could steal from the shop and change your name to Thief for the rest of the game. Then you could enter that shop again and get absolutely crushed by the shopkeep. Maybe, on second thought, maybe don't do that. The overworld has plenty of things to find and secrets to uncover. If you ever feel like you need a hint for any reason, you can find these little phone huts around, and they give you a basic idea of where to go next. Great for those extended breaks between play sessions. Do you remember the owl from Ocarina of Time? Well, it might come as a bit of a surprise, but this is where the owl makes his debut, right here. Does the same basic thing, acts as a guide for Link and the player. Do you need more? There's a house that has a bunch of books that give general advice on how to play the game, some of which are actually needed to access certain locations, up to and including the final area. Everything is perfectly crafted to make sure that you're able to progress, especially if you lose your place and can't remember where to go next. It's a dream come true for those of us with busy lives, and for kids who might not remember the last thing they attempted to do. So, you made it this far in. How about a like? Maybe a comment in the sub, yeah? Also, maybe try out that bell. I was made aware recently that you guys might not be getting these videos in your feeds, so messing with the bell should help with that. So give it a try, and let me know, yeah? Also, if you're liking this and want to see the others in this series, or maybe some of the other games I've talked about so far, check out the card in the top corner there. Or, if you make it to the end card for the suggested videos. Alright, enough of that. Let's get back to it. What exactly makes this DX, or Deluxe? Well, a few things, for sure, not least of which is the color dungeon they added. That was a pretty big deal, and it's not every day that an updated game gets released. Or, well, at least back then, anyway. Now updates are pretty much expected and tossed around like it's nothing, but back in 1998, this was almost unheard of. Unless you liked Street Fighter. Street Fighter 2 has tons of updated versions. Some, actually, as recent as 2017. But we're getting a little off topic there. Or are we? Alright, yeah, maybe a little. The Color Dungeon was something that was added, if only because of, well, the Game Boy Color. It added a fun new dungeon that you could tackle at almost any time, provided you have the boots and knew a trick from Link to the Past. The dungeon itself doesn't really add much outside of a fun new thing to do and offers a pretty reasonable reward for the player. When you beat it, you don't get another heart container or any musical instruments or anything like that, just a choice to be made. Do you take the red or the blue tunic? Now the red doubles your attack, and the blue halves the damage you take. If you don't like whatever option you chose, you can always come back here and then swap them out. Now, personally, I took the blue option, mostly because, well, I like blue, but also because I had the sword upgrade, so double damage seemed like the less appealing option. Plus, I mean, you could always just pick up the piece of power for that extra damage. Now, you could always say, but the acorn does the same thing. And technically, you would be correct, but that leaves after you take a set amount of damage or changing zones. So the defense just makes more sense to me because it's going to be with you the whole time. To each their own, though. The other added inclusion is the photo album. At certain points, if you encounter the picture mouse in his shop, you'll have these little photo ops. It reminds me a bit of the photo guy from Earthbound. If you get enough of these pictures, or even if you just take the one, you can connect them to the Game Boy printer, assuming you had one. And then you could print out these and stick them on things if you wanted. Pretty novel idea at the time. Not too many games did something like that. And if you had the functionality, I mean, why not, right? Other than that, the color is what makes this version the definitive one. For the Game Boy, anyway. If you want real definitivity, then the Switch game is the one to go with. But if you want to relive that old school lifestyle, then this is the one to play for sure. You'd be dreaming otherwise. Alright people, you know the drill. It's story time. If you haven't played any version of this game, go ahead and use this time code here to jump straight to the closing thoughts. You can also click the timestamp in the description below. No daydreaming on this one, alright? There is plenty to spoil if you aren't careful. For everybody else, let's get right to it. This game sees Link, and very specifically the Link from A Link to the Past, on a return trip from a far-off island. He left Hyrule in search of adventure and, well, training. But it all goes wrong as he gets sucked into a raging storm out of the ocean. Tying himself to the small ship's main mast and trying to navigate the rough storm to the best of his abilities, it seems like he might make it. But then a bolt of lightning strikes the boat, and the next thing we see is a girl on a beach as she walks up to a knocked out Link on the seashore. She tries to wake him up. The camera pulls up, and we see the title card. The game starts here. Link wakes up in an unfamiliar bed and home, for that matter. He's immediately greeted by Marin and Talon. Marin tells Link how she found him on the beach and explains to him the island he washed up on is called Koholint. Once Link gets his bearings, Marin tells him that his sword might still be on the beach. She was really only able to grab him and his shield. Link sets out to get his sword, and in doing so meets up with the rest of the villagers. All of them are nice enough, if not maybe a little odd, and is that a chain chomp? They all provide more background into the island of Koholint. One guy just straight up says he's going to get lost on the mountain later and to keep an eye out for him. That's, bit of an odd detail for casual conversation with a stranger. Imagine talking with somebody you just met and then they say, "Hey man, great to meet you. By the way, in about an hour, I'm going to need you to give me like $50. Don't ask questions." Eventually, once you get acquainted with the village and the people in it, you can make your way to the beach and reclaim your sword. But not before speaking with this owl. The owl tells Link of a prophecy and of the windfish, telling Link it might be his only way to get off the island. Now armed with his sword and a purpose, the adventure can really begin. First order of business is tracking down the first dungeon and claim it's a magical instrument of the sirens, the full moon cello. This is how it goes for the most part. You find and clear a dungeon, claim its siren instrument, and then get a clue on where to head next. This happens as you collect the conch horn, the sea lily bell, the surf harp, and the wind marimba. Then the story kind of takes a turn. You end up having a heart-to-heart with Marin. She takes Link to the beach, and she all but confesses her feelings for Link. She begins to wonder about Koholint, how things just exist here. Talon, her father, told her that nothing exists outside of Koholint. It's just a vast, endless ocean in all directions. But then, how did Link get here? Marin is on to something, and so are you, as a player. You know that Hyrule is a thing. You know that Link was on a journey, and now, in retrospect, you know that the bosses at each dungeon were talking about something. Link, an outsider, somehow found his way to Koholint. A little while later, after Marin tells you her dream of being able to sing to others in far-off lands, about how she wishes to be like a seagull and fly wherever the wind can take her, you find it. A slab in a ruin. The slab tells Link, that this island, Koholint, is a dream. All the monsters, all the land, all the people. Marin. Just a dream. Nothing on this island is real, with a few exceptions. Link, the windfish, and the nightmares that are holding the windfish in a deep sleep. What will you do now? This game asks you, the player, directly. What will you do? Link is real. This land and its people are not. The windfish is real, and it's hurting. It needs rescue. But at what cost? The people here seem real enough. Marin, especially. She told you her dream, her goal, her want to sing to others. It's important on a narrative level that she teaches you the ballad of the windfish, the song that's needed to wake the windfish from its deep sleep. She held the key to awaken the windfish. That song is the one that needs to be played on the siren instruments. That song, and no other. In many ways, Marin is the most important character in the game. She can always be found singing her song to others, whether in her village or the animal village. Everyone stops to listen. Both you as the player and Link as the character make the tough choice to continue the journey. Collect the rest of those siren instruments. The choral triangle, the organ of evening calm, and the thunder drum. Every boss fight from here on tells more and more of the reason for why they are fighting you. Even the owl makes note of it. They are desperate to fight you. That's why the levels get harder. They're actively trying to stop you. Each dungeon gets more elaborate. Each monster gets stronger. Every boss has some kind of new gimmick to try and circumvent you succeeding. They know. They know that when Link wakes the windfish, they will truly stop existing. Stopping at Maid Village one last time before climbing Tall Mountain, you speak with Marin. She tells you that she tried to wake the windfish with her singing. She was wishing for something while doing that, but the windfish didn't wake. Did you hear her wish? What was her wish anyway? She stops short of telling you. Making your way to the top of the mountain, you play Marin's song, the Ballad of the Windfish. The egg cracks. Link enters and makes his way to the core of the dream. Here, Link faces off against some familiar faces, nightmares from Link's past, none more obvious than Aghanim and, well, Ganon, of course. These are the nightmare's last desperate attempts at stopping Link, hoping to prey on Link's worst fears. It doesn't work. Link defeats them all and speaks with the windfish, playing the ballad one last time. The windfish wakes, Koholint and all of its inhabitants start to fade away. Every location, every monster, every person erased. They never even saw it coming. Everything that was Koholint is gone. Link awakens on the wreckage that was his boat, still tied to it. How long did that adventure take? Was any of it even real? Link looks up to see what was blocking the sun, and he sees the windfish. It was real. Everything that happened was real. The song, still echoing in Link's mind, was real. Marin was real. During that adventure, she had asked you, Link, to above all else, not to ever forget her song. Her dream lives on with you. So here we are at the closing of this grand tale. Welcome back to all of you who skipped ahead just a little bit, and, well, to everybody else, thanks for sticking with it all the way through. What can I say here? I had played this game a long time ago, though to be honest, I never finished it. I had every intention to, especially when the remake came out, but I never got to it till now. This retrospective series is going to have me playing and beating a lot of Zelda games I'd never really finished before, this one key among them. I enjoyed my time with this game. It had some faults, for sure. The constant equipment swapping is a big one, but honestly, it's not really that bad. The story had me intrigued, especially with its ending. I won't talk about it here, but for those of you who skipped it, you might want to play it sooner rather than later. Or at the very least, rewind a little bit and catch up with the rest of us. While this game isn't necessarily the deepest one out there, it certainly is still something that makes you think. What does it mean to dream? What happens when we wake up from one? When does a good dream become a nightmare? What dreams do we carry with us when we sleep and when we wake? What about shared dreams? What are the implications of something like that? For the developers, this is a dream come to life. They made the best Zelda game they could with what they had, and they poured their blood, sweat, and tears into this. You can tell it was a passion project for them. For us players, it was a dream come true. A Zelda game we could take with us anywhere we went. It was also a little bit of a nightmare because of what it asks of you. But mostly, I think for everybody involved in it, whether you played it decades ago, played the most recent version of it just yesterday, or are a developer on the team making this happen, I think we can all agree that this was a dream we wanted to be a part of, even just for a few minutes longer. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the end card. Thank you for getting all the way here. I know it might not have been easy. This game really had me going, especially near the end. As ever, you can find me here on YouTube at the socials listed in the description, if you'd like. Here are some other videos that you could take a look at. In the meantime, hold on to your dreams, for your sake and for the sake of whoever you hold close. For now, take it easy. I'll catch you later. Keep it clean.